This summer, Fairbanksans have gotten used to hearing the Opera Fairbanks Orchestra perform, and we are very fortunate today to have Maestro Gregory Buchalter in the studio, and he's sitting right across from me. Hello, Maestro.
Hi, Emerson.
First of all, tell us about what's going on July 4th.
Yeah, so this is my favorite time of the year, truly. I look forward all season to coming to Fairbanks in the summer for a myriad of reasons, but not the least of is, of course, working with our opera company. And in the last 3 years, we've been presenting symphonic concerts in addition to our big opera presentation. And it's become so successful that last year when we did Mahler Fourth, we were turning away people. We were completely filled. So the tradition of opera companies performing symphonic concerts is huge, and kind of a European tradition. Almost all European opera houses present symphonic concerts with their orchestra as well as ballets. The Vienna Philharmonic, gets to play at the Staatsoper. So, I mean, it's what a luxury there is there. And, of course, at the Met, where I work most of the year, we present regular concerts at Carnegie Hall. And it's great for the orchestra players because to have the flexibility and versatility of playing the different styles. Symphonic music creates completely different challenges and rewards from opera music, vice versa, chamber music. And I think it's so important that that all sorts of styles are presented for the orchestra. So we've adopted this policy, and we've been, like I said, performing for the last 3 years. Because this year our concert falls on the 4th of July, we are privileged to present a special holiday concert, which makes perfect sense, to do American music. And so the program consists largely of American music, which has been really exciting for me because this is a repertoire that I've loved forever since I was a kid, but don't really have the specialty I do, for example, in, well, obviously the opera literature, but in the more traditional symphonic repertoire. I've actually been involved in a lot of contemporary opera. But so our program includes the big part of the program is the Bernstein symphonic dances from West Side Story, which truly has been one of my favorites since I was a child. And what happened with this piece is interesting. When Bernstein wrote West Side Story for the theater, for Broadway in 1957, he realized he was limited by only being able to use 14 players in the pit. And he also realized, well, I don't know that Lenny realized this at the moment, but West Side Story completely changed where the American musical was going. Nothing was written that was this complex in terms of rhythmic complexity and just overall orchestral coloring and brilliance. Huge percussion. I mean, he incorporates in the score bizarre things like, well, cowbells are not that strange, but a whistle, a police whistle. And he actually he writes out in the score that in the symphonic dances that the orchestra snaps their fingers rhythmically at some point and yells mambo at 2 other points. So he was limited when he wrote, of course, I think it's truly considered the greatest American musical, West Side Story. I mean, what he did just in terms of sheer melody and then, like I said, the complexity and development orchestrally with it was phenomenal. And although Porgy and Bess certainly touched upon all these issues I'm talking about, I really consider Porgy and Bess an opera. We can talk about that as we're talking about American composers, not a musical. So Bernstein realized that at some point he needed to completely develop what his ideas were for West Side Story into a symphonic suite. And it was only several years after 1961, after its premiere on Broadway, that he was able to write this work. And it's about 23 minutes long, and it incorporates some of the more popular melodies from West Side Story. But it's developed in such a way that it's almost not recognizable. I mean, it is because it's there, but he develops it in completely different ways than as we know it from the musical. And he wrote it and it consists mostly of the dance numbers. Except for the famous song Maria, they're all dance numbers that are in the symphonic suite. And they're completely performed as one unit, so they delve into each other. So it's a fantastic piece, and I'm so excited to do it with our great orchestra here. It'll be a challenge because of its difficulty, but
so where is this taking place? And
yeah, Pioneer Park. It'll be a free concert on July 4th at 7 p.m.
Great. And talk about the rest of the program. There's Ives, the unanswered question.
Yeah.
Talk
so
about that.
in trying to put what to do around the Bernstein, there were certain options. Ives, the unanswered question, is one of the most famous American pieces, but in 5 minutes, it is a piece of immense complexity and intrigue, and a very philosophical piece. It's written with 3 different layers, or shall I say divisions of the orchestra. One is string section, playing tonally, and the other is a trumpet, a solo trumpet that is written to be from far away. And the trumpet actually is asking the question, and it is the perennial question of existence. What is life? What is existence? What are we? And then each time the trumpet asks this very small question, there is a wind quartet. Ives scores it for 4 flutes, which we are doing. Sometimes it's been done by, different combinations of winds, but in any case, 4 winds. And they try to answer the question, first somewhat tonally, then it becomes atonal and almost complete gibberish, really suggesting that there is no answer to the question of existence. And one could also translate this as the question between tonality and atonality, because the strings throughout all this are in their own world. I must say that each of these 3 groups is in their own key and own tempo. They're not coordinated, which makes it a bit of a challenge to perform.
Well,
but
I imagine.
a really, really unique and interesting piece. So this is definitely an interesting work that I feel audiences should get to know and experience, especially live, because of the unique placement of the instruments. It gives it a special effect.
Why don't we listen to The Unanswered Question by Ives? And this is a recording by Leonard Bernstein in the New York Philharmonic. And then we'll get back to our interview.
Great.
And that was Ives' Unanswered Question, played by the New York Philharmonic under the direction of Leonard Bernstein. And this afternoon, I have the honor of having Maestro Buchalter in the studio with me. And tell me a little bit about what it is that you do at the Metropolitan Opera in New York.
The Met, but I'm on vacation from there.
You don't want to talk about work.
Absolutely, I do. Yeah, I've been at the Met for quite a while. I am an assistant conductor there. I do actually several things. I am a cover conductor, so that if the conductor were to have to cancel a performance, not able to conduct, I would take over and conduct. Which means that I'm very busy in the preparation of rehearsals, working with the singers. And I'm also in charge of all the offstage music. My title is Maestro di Banda, which people may not realize, but if you go to see an operatic performance, in almost every opera, I would say there are very few exceptions, there's offstage music. And why would there be offstage music? Why would there be another orchestra that would play behind the scenes? Well, always depicting something in the story. Verdi is famous for his offstage, quote, bandas, they're called. We call them the Italian word for stage bands. And that is because he wrote so many party scenes. Rigoletto, Traviata have an offstage orchestra coming from another room in the party. And these people had the luxury of having their own orchestra hired to play. Famous Aida, the Triumphant March, where you have trumpets on the stage and then a whole brass band off stage, giving the atmospheric effect of just different ongoings. Processions, all the Wagner operas, Lohengrin, Tannhäuser, and again, Verdi have processions. Don Carlo, which we just did the Oro da Fe scene, where people are announced and brought in. Otello, all the trumpets with fanfare, and these are offstage trumpets playing. Rosenkavalier, which we're doing this year, has a big offstage orchestra playing all the famous waltzes in Act 3. And the difficulty in doing this is the coordination. If I have a monitor of the pit conductor, which I am following along with, but if I were to be exactly with his beat, you would hear it very late in the audience because music delays as sound travels. So I have to figure out how much I have to anticipate that offstage conducting and somehow get it so that it's timed exactly with the pit so that when you hear it in the orchestra, it sounds together. And there's so many factors that change how much I need to anticipate or don't anticipate, or and it depends on the set, the scenery, because often music will bounce off the set, or if it's a very busy set, if it's a very open set, then it creates a whole different delay or situation. Our ballo production, we had a new ballo in Maschera this year, of Verdi, had a completely different delay effect than the previous one. So I had to completely change exactly the proportion of how I conduct it from the last production. And ballo is a particularly hard one because there's a lot of antiphonal effects going on where the pit orchestra will have something very rhythmic and then we will repeat it immediately. So to get those exactly to sound together is not so easy.
It's incredible now that Fairbanks now has the high definition broadcast from the Met. Now we actually get to see your work actually happening up here. It's pretty exciting.
And all the singers that I bring in our productions, I mean, I've been very proud that over all these years I've always featured some stars from the Met, and this year is no exception. And you could see our Carmen, Patricia Risley, in several of the HD broadcasts this season, including the Francesca da Rimini, and our Escamillo, Trevor Scheunemann, is featured in the Carmen, in fact, which I think was just shown last week here.
Wow.
So I'm very proud, of course, of all the singers that I'm able to bring to Fairbanks.
Well, we're really, really excited to have them. It's probably one of the highlights of the summer, I think. But going back to the unanswered question, you mentioned something about the different setup or the challenges that it requires, having the different the placement of the different sections.
Yeah, I hope your listeners could hear the ethereal effect of the strings, which just stayed in tonality and just stayed sustained. The trumpet asking 7 times, what is this question? What is existence? What is life? And the winds gradually being confused and not able to answer until the last outburst was just gibberish. And then they gave up. And then the trumpet asks the question one last time and they don't respond. And we just have the strings just dying out in tonality, as if to say, this goes unanswered. There's just no true answer for what existence is. I love the ethereal effect of that, and my idea is to have the trumpet behind the audience and changing position for each of the questions. And I've talked to our trumpet player, Karen Gustafson, and we have a couple ideas about how to handle that. And then I'm not sure yet where to put the 4 winds. It has to be a place where they don't have contact with the strings. Well, we'll see. I mean, so much depends on the theater. Like I'm saying, even a house like the Met, every production is different. And some of the offstage effects are actually in the audience. For example, when I did Tristan with Daniel Barenboim, he wanted the offstage brass to actually be in the audience, and we were in one of the balconies, one of the tiers above the audience, and it was one of the most thrilling effects, I must say. It was also really fun to look down and watch the audience, as we were playing.
Incredible.
So I think the key to the theater and opera and the arts and music in general is flexibility, that every situation will be different. Performing opera in Fairbanks is so different than New York. And it's not for the obvious reasons. For me, it's because of audience reaction. I find, and part of why I come back here every summer and enjoy it so much is that the audience response here is unbelievable. They are so happy and excited to have this great music, this great opera, and to have all of us. I mean, people are constantly telling me, thank you for coming here and doing this for us. We're just so happy to have you. And it's that enthusiasm that, for me, affects how I'm going to perform.
Sure.
And so part of this program, what might seem a little odd, just in talking about the rest of the program, to round out the American portion of it, we're doing 4 of Copland's old American songs. And I want to talk about what makes American music American, but Copland is the perfect example that he would take folk songs, regular folk songs, and orchestrate it in his own unique way. And these are popular songs. So I'm actually having Trevor Scheunemann, the baritone from the Met, who I told you about, who is singing Escamillo, sing 2 of them, and our own local favorite, Morgan Reed, singing 2 of them. So part of Opera Fairbanks' mission is to bring in great artists like these singers from the Met and incorporate them with local talent that we have here, like Mr. Emerson Eads here, who is also performing in Carmen. So I just love the integration of these professionals singers with lots and lots of experience from houses like the Met coming in and then working with side by side with people here who, you know, crave being around people like that. And I see you because we've been involved now in so many productions together, and I see you always at the first musical rehearsal, just kind of in awe of hearing this great singing. And I just know that it inspires the singers that we use from here and the musicians and all.
Definitely.
So
well, the program sounds incredible for the orchestral concert. I'm really looking forward to that. But explain again about what makes American music American.
Yeah, and that's such a great question, and I'm going to answer it with another question: what makes America America? You know, America is a relatively recent country when you think of all the, you know, European countries and all. It's only been around 200 plus years, and it doesn't have the long tradition of history and music that, many of the great European countries do. So what it is, at the risk of sounding cliche and stereotypical here, it's the melting pot of so many different cultures. So American music is really basically made up of everything else, but of course put in with its unique style. So some of the great influences from American music from the onset have been French, Spanish, Latin, Mexican, African. And you hear all these cultures mixed in American music. One of the biggest influences in American music is, sadly to say, what has also been one of the most shameful parts of our history, and that is slavery. But the one thing that slavery did leave us with was a wealth of new musical development, because the songs of the slaves became what we know as blues and eventually jazz and ragtime. And that was all influenced by this period. So that I find is a big part of what makes American music. And then beyond that, one can identify in American music openness. For example, Copland is so famous for this: open fifths, open octaves, and unison, which means that there's a lack of harmony, but this open feeling. And to me, that suggests the openness of the great American landscape, the great frontier, the prairies. There's that. There's also what I find in American music interesting is that there's a fine line between the, quote, high art, elitist status of what a lot of European music was at the time, and the music of the populace, the people's music, which translates as folk music. And part of that is because, Copland, for example, grew up in the Depression. So he identified himself as not as this great composer, but really as just one of the populace again. And as a result, he wrote music and themes and incorporated in his music things from everyday life. You'll hear square dances, you'll hear folk tunes, you'll hear hymns. And this, like I said, kind of blurs the line between high art and what is popular music. And of course, this goes all the way to modern times with rock music. I mean, Leonard Bernstein used jazz unendingly. I mean, that you'll hear that in the West Side Story. But his Mass, I don't know if you're familiar with that, incorporates complete rock and roll with electric guitars. And in the 70s, when that was written, of course, it created quite a stir. But you know, that's part of art too, that sometimes we have to create a stir and that so that the music becomes, you know, I mean, it's amazing when you look back in history and think of the things that were not accepted at their premiere. I mean, let's talk about Carmen. It was a big fiasco at its premiere. Bizet died shortly after the premiere of Carmen, thinking that it would never be performed again. It was just not accepted, partly because of the story matter for the opera comique, which was used to light, fluffy French operettas of Offenbach and all. Here we had the heroine on stage being an, you know, amoral person, perhaps. And here she was killed on stage, the heroine killed on stage. That was unheard of. So actually, Carmen received quite negative reviews at the premiere, and it took a while. It recovered quickly, but not until Bizet was long gone. So
talk about when, just to remind listeners, where this concert is happening.
July 4th. Can't forget the date. Since I guess we don't have fireworks in Alaska because we couldn't see them because it's still quite light. We will have the fireworks with our concert. In fact, we're ending with Stars and Stripes by Sousa. How could we not in a concert like this? I actually did stick in a couple non-American pieces. partly for variety, partly for practical reasons. My idea was to open with the Bernstein Candide Overture, but practicality kind of prevented that from happening. And then I thought, again, talking about America being such a diversion of different cultures and styles and influences, why not throw in something maybe not American, but still quite American? And because it's a holiday concert, I think it was appropriate to open with something fun and exciting, and the overture to Johann Strauss's Die Fledermaus is perfect because it's full of jolly tunes. And I must say that I conducted this in Vienna, the whole opera, so I feel like I'm a specialist in Viennese waltz and the lilt and the styles.
Awesome.
So I can have kind of a Viennese influence here.
That's terrific.
And then for complete contrast, I chose another Strauss, Richard Strauss, and we're presenting the Dance of the Seven Veils from Salome, which again is another opera that I've conducted quite a bit, and I have a long attachment to. So, and it's just a great orchestral piece, full of colorings and incredible orchestral color and texture. It's when Salome dances for her father in the hopes to get the head of John the Baptist. Very dysfunctional family there. She asks for him to do something for him, and he says, "Salome, dance for me, and I will do anything for you." So she dances completely, stripping herself of the seven veils. And the music is so descriptive and, like I say, colorful. Even without the dance happening, because it is an orchestral concert, you can absolutely feel it.
We're really looking forward to the program. It's going to be a really fun mix of music, and I think we should listen to the West Side Story.
Great.
The dances. So this is the West Side Story Symphonic Dances as conducted by Michael Tilson Thomas and the London Symphony Orchestra. One of the things that's on it is the Copland songs. Talk about your connection with American music, and in particular, talk about, since we just got finished listening to the Leonard Bernstein, your connection with Lenny, how that may have...
Well, I've used him by the informal term Lenny, because everybody did. And unfortunately, not only did I get to work with him, but I came very close to having dinner with him, and unfortunately he passed away a week later. So I was really looking forward to meeting him, as he, without question, was one of the greatest influences. At that time, I was very young and just starting out my career, and it was so sad to have, of course, missed out on that opportunity just to spend time with this genius. Fortunately, I say my other great musical influence, James Levine, I did get to, of course, and still do, work with very closely. He's been definitely my greatest musical influence to this day. And so I really don't have a connection to Bernstein other than how strongly I feel his music. What's interesting about again, we'll call him Lenny, because just like James Levine insists we call him Jimmy, not Maestro. So I guess you can call me Greggy. I don't know. He always felt that he was always going to be pigeonholed as this composer of West Side Story, which I told you, as I said, to me is a musical masterpiece. Completely changed, revolutionized the American musical. But he wrote some more, quote, serious music, like his symphonies. His first symphony, the Jeremiah Symphony. He wrote so much music, but he felt that he was really never appreciated or known for that. So, I mean, he kind of like Bizet, dying, not thinking Carmen would ever be known. Leonard Bernstein also, left this earth feeling that he was always going to be known for only as the composer of West Side Story and Candide, which, as great masterpieces as they are, he felt that's not really what he was about. Of course, he was also a conductor and the greatest conductor of his era. So, kind of like you, wearing many hats, right? I mean, I should say I knew you first. You were chorus master for my Cenerentola, right? The first complete production I did here.
Never forget that.
You did a fantastic job with that. I've known you as a composer because I've performed your music here during our 40th anniversary concert. And now I know you as a singer, so you can follow in Leonard Bernstein's footsteps.
I won't ask you to comment on which one's best or worst. So one of the things on the program are the Copeland songs.
Yes. Getting back to that. So I think I mentioned that Copeland arranged these with his own unique orchestration and the textures being open unison. He starts Simple Gifts, which I think you're going to be playing, which we are also playing, which is a famous Shaker song. And the simplicity of it, he just has the opening introduction you'll hear is all unison. Instead of harmonizing it, it's just this unison melody. And it just creates this open feeling, I think, openness. We're doing 4 of his songs, including, I think we'll also play I Bought Me a Cat, which is just a really, really fun song. Listen to the orchestration and listen to how each time he talks about a different animal that he bought, it just changes in orchestration and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and just adds on. And that his use of winds. And again, I said because he grew up during the Depression, he thought of himself very much as a commoner and wrote with music that people can identify, and these folk songs are a perfect example.
Well, let's listen to them. This is Thomas Hampson with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, and here it goes. And that was the Copeland songs, the old American songs, the Simple Gifts, and I Bought Me a Cat, as performed by Thomas Hampson. So I am in the studio this afternoon with Maestro Gregory Buchalter, who's the artistic director of Opera Fairbanks, and we're very fortunate to have him in the studio. We're also very fortunate to have him as our artistic director here. But they're doing an unusual thing this July 4th. Not an unusual thing, but they do a free concert every summer, and it's a symphonic concert, and it's open to the public. Talk to us a bit more about the rest of the program that's going to be on that.
Yeah, I'm going to say again that the challenge of an opera company, the differences between an opera orchestra playing symphonic music, or let's put it this way, an orchestra playing symphonic music and opera are vast. And I mentioned at the beginning of the program that for the artistic quality of the group, I think playing both equally is very important. We do use a lot of members of the symphony, Fairbanks Symphony, so they get, their fair share all season long of playing symphonic music, the symphonic repertoire. And then in the summertime, get to play opera. Opera, for the obvious reason, has a lot more coordination issues. I mean, we're dealing with a distance where, we're dealing with playing in a pit, being submerged, as opposed to being on stage, seen and playing out. So we are really accompanying, but obviously with certain operas like Carmen, which is written with such incredible orchestral texture and color, Salome, which you're going to hear soon, which it's my dream to bring to Fairbanks one day, where the orchestra is busier than the singers in a way, because they're doing so many other things. But the symphonic music is a little more transparent. Without, how could I say that? Obviously, the Bernstein is filled with different tempo changes, meter changes, which creates difficulty. Opera creates difficulty in that, again, we're coordinated with a stage, with a production, things that can go wrong in the production. I can't tell you how many times the orchestra or the conductor had to adjust to things go at the Met. I'm saying performances I've been involved in because something went wrong on stage, where it's something as simple as a prop fell and one had to hesitate before moving forward with the orchestra. Things like that you wouldn't realize. But then you're controlling a whole chorus and an orchestra, and soloists, which symphonic music also, we have, look at Mahler's Eighth Symphony, the Symphony of 1,000, where you have, a huge chorus and scores of singers. But it's very different when they're standing right on stage in front of you, often looking at the music, as opposed to having it memorized running around the stage. Sure. Carmen, Act 1, the fight chorus for the women is extremely hard musically, but they're also running around, fighting with each other, hardly looking at the conductor.
Right.
So again, they're very different challenges, and I think it's great for an orchestra to be versatile enough to be able to be comfortable in both styles.
So tonight is your first rehearsal with this orchestra.
Yes, first
what's
time.
What's one of the favorite things that you have or that you like about conducting this orchestra? What's the exciting thing for you?
Well, it's interesting. Tonight's our first rehearsal, and we perform on July 4th, which is really only a few days. July 4th at 7 p.m. at Pioneer Park, by the way. It's really only a few days away, and when you think that to get together with a new orchestra in 4 or 5 days and then do a performance is hardly any time, because part of the relationship between a conductor and the players of the orchestra is comfort, that the orchestra can read me technically well, and that would have nothing to do with my clarity or my technique, but more just getting used to a different conductor, because orchestras play with different conductors all the time.
Sure.
Everybody brings their own style. What's really great is that I think if you were to listen to a singer or even a pianist play, you might be able to identify that pianist. I could identify Horowitz in a moment. He has such a unique tone and touch and way of playing. Most singers you can identify for their voices, like Tom, I know very well, who just sang, Tom Hansen, and that voice is unmistakable to me. But can you tell a performance, can you tell the orchestra and or the conductor from a performance? So it takes a very astute, musician to be able to do that, but it absolutely can be done. And it's not the obvious is tempo. Well, tempo is, what's the big deal? Everybody has a different tempo, but it's what you bring out in the texture of the piece. What is important? Bernstein was famous for bringing out textures, inner voices in Brahms symphonies that you kind of never knew were there before. He maybe took chances and did some things that were not conventional. But again, that's why we're still talking about him long after he's been gone.
Right.
Not so long in his case.
Oh, I remember. I remember last year when when you guys did the Jupiter Symphony. The biggest thing that was just obvious to me was how thrilled the players were to be doing this concert and playing together, and that joy just made the final movement just all the more electric.
And we encored the fugue, didn't we, at the
Yeah.
end? I remember that. The reason I started doing these concerts, I've already talked about the importance, I think, of the versatility of orchestras playing different styles and different genres. But we had just done Don Giovanni the season before, and the orchestra played so well. I mean, it was, I left with such a great satisfaction with them. I said, I've got to reward this group. We've got to do something that, not that they don't enjoy playing opera, of course they do, but something where they're more featured, where they are on stage, where they are the soloists, so to speak.
Sure.
So we did that first concert with the Jupiter. We also did, if you remember, a bunch of Vivaldi concertos where we were able to use a lot of the instrumentalists as soloists. We did the Vivaldi 4 violin concertos, so we were able to use our wonderful concert mistress, Kathy Butler, of course, playing, and some of her students, and Karen Gustafson played the trumpet. So yeah, I think it's great. Again, it gives us all a chance to make music in many different ways, but also just to feel different styles. So getting in front of the orchestra tonight, although I do get to know this group now, there always are going to be some different players, but
Sure.
I do feel like I know this group, so it will make it possible to have this 4 or 5 day rehearsal period and do a great performance on July 4th at 7 p.m. at Pioneer Park. It's going to make it possible because I already know them. I already know the sound of a lot of the players, which will influence my tempos and rubatos and how I can do certain things with them. I already know the limitations of, and I say that because every orchestra has limitations in
Sure.
one way or another, and also where their fortes are, where they are strong, and that helps me to know, even before I start working with them, what I need to do to get the best results out of them, and really a short rehearsal period.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to on July 4th, and that's not even counting the real big concert, the Carmen, that's happening later on. So
it's a concentrated period from tonight up until the dress rehearsal of Carmen. The orchestra will not have one night off. We will be rehearsing every single night.
Wow!
And when is the opening of Carmen?
11th,
I think the 11th.
13th.
Yeah, the 11th. So actually, the 10th will be a day off after. So until the final dress. So that's the dedication to these people, why I come back here, because they enjoy it so much. Who would put themselves through that? And, that's in the evening. I'm sure everybody is doing various things during the daytime, too.
Right.
So, no, it's a great feeling to have such response from the players, from the chorus, from everybody here. And I mentioned the community and the audience. So I do hope the community, Fairbanks, will come to both these events, because I think it is so special to have this right in your own backyard. I mean, you don't have to fly to the Metropolitan Opera to hear some of the great singing we are bringing in.
Right.
And on our concert, again, Trevor Scheunemann, baritone from the Met, is going to be singing with us, as well as our local Bill Reed. So you get so much for free, huh?
Well, we should probably, if you're going to plan to come to the concert, should come early because there's probably going to be only standing room.
Last time we actually were turning people away, which was very sad. But
well, thank you so much, Maestro, for coming in. It's been, I mean, I know I can speak for a lot of Fairbanks by saying we're really, really proud to have you here and the talent that you bring to this place and just the joy that comes with it. It's really special, and thank you so much for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emerson. It's been great talking to you.
And so next we're going to listen to Salome dances from the opera Salome by Richard Strauss.